So Helldivers 2 is, for a lack of a better term, in flames after an announcement was made by their Twitter page. Ratioed by the comments, there are more comments than likes, and this thing has reached 26.4 million views since it was posted on May 3rd. And we're going to go over this announcement, but what it says in short is that people who want to play Helldivers 2 are going to have to link their accounts to PSN, the PlayStation Network, as a requirement made by Sony. Now, this thing has been in place for quite a while, for quite a few months. I think since the beginning of the game's launch, they had a little orange box right above the purchase option, basically telling people that this thing requires a PSN account in order to be able to play. But because of a technical issue, Arrowhead, the developer of Helldivers 2, was letting people play the game regardless. There is also incredible fallout because of the restrictions in other countries for playing this game, which we're going to go over first. But to give you full context of what this message says, let me read it to you guys right here. Attention Helldivers, due to technical issues at the launch of Helldivers 2, we allowed the linking requirements for Steam accounts to a PlayStation Network account to be temporarily optional. That grace period will now expire. See details below in this post. Account linking plays a critical role in protecting our players and upholding the values of safety and security provided on PlayStation and PlayStation Studios games. This is our main way to protect players from griefing and abuse by enabling the banning of players that engage in that type of behavior. So they're saying this is so that they can ban people a lot more easily. This is something that the community managers have stressed, at least a few of them. A couple of them expressing excitement, which we'll touch upon, but we have a lot to cover here. So this is basically the gist of what this message is saying. Now, to put it lightly, gamers are not happy about this decision. This is probably the biggest mistake that Sony has ever made in terms of video games, probably in terms of ever. I've never seen a bigger disaster than this. This dwarfs the Stellar Blade censorship issue by like a mile, because what this is basically telling gamers is that if you don't have a PSN account, you can't play this game, even after you have already purchased it and have been playing it for months without having to require a PSN account to be created. But this problem goes a lot deeper than people realize. And there are also several reasons why people are unhappy about this. There's an extremely negative reaction to this post. Grums does a great job of breaking down why people are upset. He says PC players want nothing to do with having to create an account on another platform in order to continue enjoying their favorite game. Players felt this was a data grab move to bolster Sony PSN numbers and harvest their information. Players did not want to support Sony and felt that their data was at risk due to several large profile PlayStation data breaches. So what does he mean in terms of data breaches? Well, look no further than one of the most recent reviews on Helldivers 2, which blew up, by the way. 68,359 people so far have found this review helpful. 942 people found it funny. But it says, yeah, I'm not linking my account to PSN. April 2011. Hackers accessed personal data of 77 million Sony PlayStation Network users. That is a lot. 77 million users. And then in 2011, May, 1 month later, personal details on 25 million Sony Online Entertainment customers stolen. I don't know if you guys remember them getting hacked and all of that information just being posted all over the internet. June 2011. That was only a month later. Sony Pictures website hacked, exposing 1 million accounts. So their security is garbage. November 2014, hackers steal 100 terabytes of data from Sony Pictures. August 2017, hacker group accesses Sony social media accounts. Sony is just terrible at managing their security for every medium that they're involved in. September 2023 and October 2023, they finally started investigating it and they notified their employees of a data breach. So yeah, but there is more to this. Joining PSN required agreement to PSN's TOS, their terms of service, which many viewed as more restrictive and arbitrary than Steam's terms of service, giving Sony too much power to ban or regulate their accounts for the game. And keep in mind as well that people are still upset about Stellar Blade and the censorship issues surrounding that game. Now, some people suggested that Sony is doing this with Helldivers 2 because, a bunch of people have started to cancel their PSN accounts and that Sony is trying to save face by forcing people to create accounts for this. But no, the truth is that this has been in the works for 6 months. Even the Helldivers CEO knows about this, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. But let's read on. The game was sold on Steam in 190 countries, but 120 of these countries do not allow or have access to PSN, locking out a huge number of players who are unable to comply but had paid for the game. So what does that mean? It means that this game was being sold on Steam from the very beginning in other countries who can't even make a PlayStation account. So because of a technical issue, Arrowhead said, we're going to go ahead and let people play play this game, even though there is that small orange box in the corner saying that you can't play this without a PSN account. They temporarily disabled that so that people from other countries, which we're going to go over in just a second which countries those are, could play this game, which really confused me. I posted at 8 in the morning on May 3rd when I found out about this. Why was Helldivers 2 being sold on Steam in countries that can't even use PSN? That's my question. You can also get into trouble with Sony's terms of service just for trying to find a workaround via VPN. Some people have shown their evidence and claims that you can do it without a VPN. So I actually took a look at the EULA after reading this post from r/Kotaku in action. This user says that the Helldivers 2 EULA above, nowhere does it say you must have a PSN to play, and I actually took a look at the EULA. I read through the entire thing, it takes a while, and I really did not see any evidence saying that it is a requirement for you to have PSN to be able to play this thing. Yeah, you guys can take a look at this if you want. It took me a while to read through all of this. I really did comb through all of it, which is probably why I didn't make a video for the last few days. That last part was a joke. But here's what I find interesting. If you go onto the archived page from May 3rd for the frequently asked questions on PlayStation.com, it says, do I have to sign in to PSN to play a PlayStation game on PC? This was on May 3rd. It says signing into PSN is optional when playing a PlayStation game on PC. So nowhere did it say that there was actually a requirement to be able to play a PlayStation game on PC, but guess what? Shortly after this controversy started, Sony changed it. Do I have to sign into PSN to play a PlayStation game on PC? This is on their website currently as it stands. Some PlayStation games may require you sign in and link to an account for PSN. So they're changing it. Sony changed it under everybody's noses. I mean, this is corporate meddling like on a scale that is completely unprecedented. It's horrible what Sony has done, and we haven't even gotten to the country stuff yet. Sony is basically changing their own rules to support this horrible decision that they're making, and everybody is suffering for it, most especially gamers who are not even in countries that you can make a PSN account for. If you take a look at this thing right here, this review basically gives us a list of countries where people can't make PSN accounts. You can take a look at these countries right here and see for yourself. The Dominican Republic, Egypt, there are so many countries in which people have already purchased this game because of the fact that they didn't need that PlayStation requirement in order to play it, who are now going to be locked out because Sony has now locked those countries out. That was always the plan apparently, but people were very ill-informed about the subject, so they made a bunch of purchases for this game, and now they're going to be locked out of it because they can't meet that PlayStation account requirement. So Sony has gotten them to pay for this game, they've gotten their money, and they're running with it, and these people are left with zero choice but to not play the game. They're locked out. All they can do is refund it, which is something that a lot of players have decided to do, especially at the behest of one of the community managers, which we're also going to go over. This is from Spitz, who actually sparked a lot of controversy for this post. It's not like this is the first or even the 14th mainstream game to require a third-party account that takes a couple minutes to create, but if it's a deal breaker to have to take 120 seconds out of your day to enter an email and password and then forget about it, change your Steam review and make your displeasure known on a platform where it matters. Now, to be fair, this community manager did not know the extent of Sony's fraudulent behavior and attack against the player base from countries that can't even access PSN, because they did change their tune. But before that happened, players actually took this person's advice, because take a look at the reviews for this game. This is one of the craziest things I've ever seen in gaming, in entertainment, in anything. I've never seen such a visceral and immediate reaction to this. I mean, players are extremely angry. You can see just from this chart behind me that people not only took what the community manager said seriously, but they're also taking this entire situation seriously. It certainly did not help what that community manager said. Who knows how much of an effect that had, but players certainly did react to what has been going on with Sony messing with Helldivers 2. So the game is currently sitting at overwhelmingly negative. This used to be mostly positive. This game has been very successful and a lot of people like it and have given it plenty of good reviews, but this thing that Sony has done has caused such a huge backlash that people have given this game over 200,000 negative reviews. Out of the 221,000 reviews from the last 30 days, only 16% of those 220,000 reviews reviews are positive, overwhelmingly negative for recent reviews. All reviews come out to a total of 500,000 for mixed. So this game's reputation has been almost completely destroyed by what Sony has done. And if you take a look at the reviews, there is proof that this specific situation has caused that amount of backlash. On May 3rd, the morning that this started to gain traction, there were 36,989 reviews. That's already insane. But when I first took a look at this, it was only a few hours into this announcement and they already had like 20,000 reviews. But that was just on May 3rd. On May 4th, 71,252 negative reviews. Some people tried to save this, like 2,770 reviews arrived on the Steam webpage as well, in defense of the game most likely. But it was completely dwarfed by those 70,000 reviews. I've never seen gamers band together in such a way, and it's such a shame because Helldivers 2 is one of the most successful games that Sony has ever helped publish. The fact that they're destroying it right now, there's no surprise there that players are reacting in this way. And we haven't even taken a look at May 5th because today alone, 67,727. The day isn't even over yet. It's only halfway over at the time of recording. So the rate at which these reviews are coming in is growing exponentially. I mean, Helldivers 2 is getting wrecked. You have this thin blue line and then these three gigantic red strips here. This game is being destroyed. It's being destroyed. You want proof of this? Look at the likes. People that are liking these negative reviews, I mean, it is insane. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people. This person said, I was so busy having fun that I forgot about corporate greed for a moment. 47,000 people found this review helpful. It's not just the Steam pages either. Have you guys taken a look at Reddit? Reddit is blowing up. r/Helldivers Reddit is exploding. Yesterday, I actually made a post about it. There were posts in the 20,000 upvotes and the 30,000 upvotes. I mean, tens of thousands of upvotes on these posts that are criticizing the response from Helldivers, the response from Sony, the community managers inside of the Helldivers Discord. People are not happy. PlayStation Network isn't supported by my country. What do I do? This is somebody that responded to the CEO's post earlier today, and he says, I don't know. People upvoted this 40,000 times. Safe to say, they're probably not pleased with the way that the CEO is responding. But what else is the CEO saying? On May 3rd, when this started to go down and their game was getting review bombed, he said, ouch, right in the review score. Well, I guess it's warranted. Sorry, everyone, for how all of this transpired. I hope we will make it up and regain the trust by providing a continued great game experience. I just want to make great games. So on May 3rd, only a few hours into the situation, mostly positive, 79% of 341,000 reviews of all time. And it was only mixed recently with the 63,918 reviews. So a lot of those reviews were probably because of the community management rhetoric from earlier on, but they were mostly positive still at the time of that posting. Since then, the game has reached overwhelmingly negative. That's how steady these reviews have been coming in negative for this game, and it's been destroying the game's reputation. But the CEO had even more to say. Is this the moment to tweet, what, you guys don't have phones? On a serious note, we are talking solutions with PlayStation, especially for non-PSN countries. Your voice has been heard, and I am doing everything I can to speak for the community, but I don't have the final say. And somebody responded saying, why are you acting all blameless? Like you should have known for probably years that PSN would be a requirement, and I bet it was your call that it would not be enforced in the beginning to help with server load. To which the CEO responded, this is the CEO of Arrowhead, by the way, I do have a part to play. I am not blameless in all of this. It was my decision to disable account linking at launch so that players could play the game. I did not ensure players were aware of the requirement, and we didn't talk about it enough. So that's them admitting that they did not inform players well enough. I mean, all they really gave players from the get-go was a little orange box, but everybody was allowed to play with no issues. There was no PSN requirement. Everybody was allowed to play the game, even in the countries where you couldn't even access a PSN account. But he says we knew for about 6 months before launch that it would be mandatory for online PlayStation titles. So they knew, and people were ill-informed. They did not let people know. They just kind of hit it with them one day. They just clotheslined a bunch of players and told them, hey, this game that you've bought and have been enjoying for months on end, you're not going to be able to play it for much longer. You're going to be completely locked out. And now people are left with no choice but to refund the game because they literally can't do anything other than keep the purchase and not play the game. And again, the community managers are not making this much much easier. Grum says right here, the lead community manager for Helldivers 2 is completely incompetent. She knew about the PSN thing for a long time and failed to brief her team with a coordinated message and instead let them attack gamers and give out confusing and conflicting information. Now, if you guys know who Baskinator is, I've reported on this person in the past, this community manager, in a previous Helldivers video that I made, pointing out all of the crazy things that she's said. Some of those things include, I'm not talking much because it's not my turn to talk. It's time for black people to be heard and for white people to listen. I want to continue to do everything I can to help, including passing the mic. That on top of saying that, plus Helldivers is pretty woke dog. A game was made by a lot of LGBTQ and brown people and black people and women, and it's a big satire of jingoism. So the kind of rhetoric that these community managers have been displaying to players of this game has not been helping the situation at all. And her excitement that she's going to be able to ban a bunch more people because of this decision, despite the fact that over 200,000 people have given this game a negative review, placing her definitively on the opposite side of the argument against gamers. I mean, this stuff is insane, guys. Not all community managers are willing to die on the hill of, well, we can't wait to ban everybody. Spitzer actually came out and apologized to everybody after realizing what Sony was doing to people in countries that couldn't even access PlayStation. He gave a bunch of updates. Internal discussions are ongoing about the mandatory linking change, and while I can't reveal details, the response from our dev teams has been pretty universally negative, and we're looking for better options. Spitz also goes on to say, if a better solution isn't provided for players who are in regions without PSN coverage, I'm assured that we won't be making the requirement mandatory for those players. We're not going to force people to either break Sony terms of service or not play the game. And the Sony terms of service thing, that is in regards to using a VPN in a country that you can't access PSN in order to access it in order to play, and that Sony can punish you for it because in their terms of service it says that if you have false credentials, including being in a country that you're not supposed to be in, you could be punished for it. They could come after you. And Spitz goes on to say that change, the Steam announcement, and the FAQ are all coming from Sony and not our team at Arrowhead. So what is this person talking about in terms of the Sony announcement? I assume that is this announcement right here on their Discord that says, we have received an FAQ about mandatory account linking and created a thread here containing that info. That was on the 3rd, okay, when this was starting to explode. Now this thing has garnered a total of 22,270 dislikes. That is the emoji that people use the most to react to this post. They don't agree with it. It is just getting completely ratioed, 100%. If you guys even take a look at the chat for this, it's been on fire for days. All people are talking about in the chat is the Sony nonsense. This person says right here, Thai bread, not gonna lie, bro, unless you guys fix this thing with Sony, your company probably going under, and Sony is taking the scraps. I don't know about that. And we're going to get to the player base so that people can see how many people are still playing this game, because it's relatively unaffected, believe it or not. People are arguing about this in the chat. I mean, it's just been on fire for days. And not just this chat. This is just the Helldivers 2 General Chat 1. If you look at Helldivers 2 General Chat 2, it's also exploding and all people are talking about is Sony. And then if you go into General Chat 3, all people are talking about is Sony. This person says, not defending Sony, defending Arrowhead. What you want them to do is suicidal. I want Arrowhead to do well, and they won't by breaking off. And I do believe a lot of players share this sentiment, because if you look at the player base for this game, how many people are playing Helldivers 2? Well, if you look at this chart, you can probably see that it is relatively unchanged. But I do notice that there is a downtrend in players. From the date of 28th of April, 166,000 peak players. But today, it looks like it's probably peaking out at about 100-something thousand, 97,590 people playing an hour ago. I remember just a couple days ago, there were at least 140, 160,000 people playing. I mean, that was their 24-hour peak. Their all-time peak was almost 500,000 people, 500,000. But I noticed that there is a downtrend, and there is proof of this, because if you look at the player base in March, the game lost about 20% of its players, 57,258 players, or around that number. But in April, it got worse. They lost 34% of their player base, 74,191 players lost. I doubt that all of the blame goes to the Sony decision here. But in the last 30 days, 10,997 players lost, 7%. It's probably going to be growing. People are canceling their PlayStation accounts. I've seen reports of that everywhere. People are refunding the game, which I'm also going to touch upon. This is the biggest disaster I've ever seen. Sony has screwed up massively. I mean, This is worse than Stellar Blade. Way worse. I mean, this dwarfs Stellar Blade. I don't know what's going to happen to this video game. I really don't. I would hope that people continue to play it and support Arrowhead if this issue gets resolved, because most of the blame can be put on Sony for this, and Sony is mostly to blame for this. This is their decision, and they are at odds with the Arrowhead development team right now. Even the community managers are making a turn. Spitz said right here, yeah, I was completely unaware how many countries didn't have the ability to make a PlayStation account when I made that statement. I deeply regret implying that it was so easy for everyone to just sign up and not have to worry about it. It's absolutely not our intention to force people to break Sony terms of service or just not play the game if they're in a restricted region. There needs to be a better solution. The CEO of Arrowhead agrees with this. The community managers, I believe, agree with this. There are some of them who are just like, no, we want to ban people. We're really excited to ban people. And even Spitz said crazier things, like when Eternal Swede said this will kill Helldivers 2 on Steam, backpedal or lose your player base. And then the response from Spitz was, I thought you were refunding and leaving. I don't think that the community managers realized how big of a situation this was, but once they started to piece things together, they started to show support for the player base, as they should, because this is an overwhelmingly negative situation, with Sony outright screwing over players in other countries who cannot access their PlayStation accounts. So what has happened since then? Well, Sony was hoping that they would be able to get through this unscathed and that Helldivers wouldn't be taking any collateral damage, but it turns out that people are refunding their games successfully. There were reports that they were not able to because of the fact that they had already played for more than a couple of hours, and so they weren't being allowed to refund their game. But it turns out that you actually can. Look at this post from Grums right here. Looks like automated refund requests fail and you have to submit it again to get to a human. So if you try to submit a refund request for Helldivers 2, sometimes you'll be met with an automated refusal saying, no, sorry, you've already played more than a couple of hours, we're not going to refund your game. But if you try again, apparently you'll reach a human that will actually process your refund request. That's if you want to refund the game. I'm not saying that you should or shouldn't. I still like the game and I still play the game. And there are many people that do it. They have lost a lot of players over the past couple of months, but they still have a pretty steady player base. I mean, these numbers are pretty all right. They're not terrible. They have had a dip, but it seems more like a leveling out process and not so much people just dumping the game outright. There are people doing that, however. It really sucks to see so many people defending Sony and attacking gamers and people like Grums, even when it's very clear that Sony is to blame in all of this. Now, there are people saying that gamers are to blame for this, but the reality is this game was allowed to be played by a lot of people all over the place. There was a tiny orange box. It's actually easy to miss. I should know because I have over 250 games on my Steam account. I've had my fair share of purchases for Steam, and those little orange and yellow boxes, I barely pay attention to those. And usually, if it does require a PSN account or whatever account to play, it notifies you in game. You know, for most games I've played, I've gotten a notification in game when I've opened it up to play it saying, hey, just to make sure you got to create an account in order to play this, and then I can decide from there. But it's a very easy to miss thing. But everyone's like, well, Sony's not to blame. You gamers are the ones to blame because you guys knew that this was happening from the get-go, but you just didn't pay attention. But even the CEO and the community managers point out how ridiculous this is. They point out how ridiculous it is that Sony is doing this. They don't agree with what Sony's doing. They're trying to have internal talks about it. It certainly doesn't help that the community managers are not in agreement with the Arrowhead CEO or the Discord rules that they have because of the fact that the Helldivers moderator Purple Squidgen falsely proclaims that Grums has sexually assaulted many people. Falsely claims he sent people to attack their CMs and their families, which is ridiculous, currently banning anyone who defends me or even likes a comment that defends me from this slander. What? What is going on? So he tagged the Helldivers 2 CEO, this is not okay and your community team is out of control and lying. Also, I am not far right, I am actually left of center. The Discord's on fire. These people are panicking. They're losing their minds. They're saying things that are absurd. Someone who sexually assaulted many people he worked with lost his position as CEO, now is a far right influencer who had people attack more than one of our community managers and their families. Absolutely insane. Anyone here who is a Grums fan, please out yourself so I can help you out the door. There are community managers in here that are making Helldivers look awful. I feel like community managers should not even be a thing for these games. They clearly hate gamers. They have expressed in various situations that they hate gamers, that they have problems with different types of gamers, you know, different ethnicities of gamers. I mean, this is a thing that is a common trend in community management for video games. I can't believe that they're saying things like this, but among other types of vitriol in the Helldivers Discord, where the chat is just blowing up, Sony attacking it, then you have community managers coming after just gamers in general, not understanding the situation and trying to make it about a culture war rather than just Sony messing up, screwing gamers over, and there's blame being passed around to all involved parties. But I would say that most of the blame is on Sony. Arrowhead is panicking, surely. Yes, the CEO is panicking. Reddit is on fire. Twitter is on fire. The forums are on fire. The reviews are on fire. Helldivers 2 is in flames. Now, the CEO is trying to make things better. I'm sure they're internally discussing things. Why wouldn't they, since over 200,000 people have ruined the outside perception of this game from people who might be interested in it on Steam? But Sony is mostly to blame. I'm not going to blame gamers for this. I'm sure that a few people noticed that that thing was there from the very beginning. That's the excuse being pushed around. You should have known. You gamers should have known. There are so many people who don't know, who don't even pay attention to that kind of thing. And again, why were you even selling this game in other countries to begin with if you couldn't even access PSN later on when they make it a requirement to be able to play it? Why would they sell it? Well, my theory is Sony wanted to get as much money as they possibly could before they made this requirement a thing. I think that that's a plausible scenario because the CEO said that they don't handle the sales of the game. So I think that Sony is mostly responsible for this. To me, it's fraudulent. I would not be surprised if people start suing and making this a legal matter. They probably already are. But this is very fraudulent behavior from Sony. When you took a look at the archive of PlayStation.com and their frequently asked questions, they're changing their own rules in real time as this situation is unfolding to try to save face and make it seem like this has always been a part of the plan. It's always been a part of their system because they're panicking. Because they know that they've messed up, and they knew for a long time that this was going to happen. Helldivers is also to blame. You know, the CEO and his team are also partly to blame. Now they're trying to take responsibility for it, and I have to give them credit for that because I'm sure that they don't want this game to fail. But Sony is doing such a great job of destroying this game that it's throwing the gaming industry into a complete frenzy. The only people that I've seen defend this are either community managers, people who don't understand the situation, or the media, which is a huge surprise. Of course, the media defends it. There are a lot of outlets that are defending this, but then there are a lot of outlets that are also calling it out, which I think is fair to point out. So what do we do in this situation? Well, if you're a fan of Helldivers and you've enjoyed the game and you don't have a problem making a PlayStation account, then it is what it is, and people are going to make a PlayStation account. Some people don't think that this is a very big deal. That's understandable that they would think that. People who are in the know, who know what Sony has gone through with hacking in the past, knowing that their security is very fragile and that their data breaches are almost constant, people just don't trust giving their data to Sony. They don't trust giving their information to Sony because of how many times they've been hacked. On top of that, people are upset because they can't play the game in these countries that they've already purchased the game. So Sony is just running with that money, and all these people can do now is refund the game. That's probably exactly what they're doing. And it's such a shame because there are a lot of players who are dedicated to this game who are in those countries that will not be able to play anymore. And if you want to know what people think of that, just take a look at the reviews. Take a look at the reaction to reviews. Take a look at Reddit. Take a look at all these websites that are talking about Helldivers. It is just massive. I've never seen such a movement. You know, Actman was saying in a post yesterday, I believe he said that all these Helldivers players were conditioned through all of this motivation of democracy in game to move as a unit and react accordingly to whatever kind of information came down the pipeline. And this is what's happened. I mean, they've banded together. All the Helldivers players have banded together and given this game an overwhelmingly negative amount of reviews. Can they even recover from that? I mean, sure, people can change their reviews from negative to positive. That can happen. But my goodness, the scale of this, I feel like it would be really difficult to recover from this kind of negativity. But I'm hoping that they do because the game really is good. There are reasons to love this game. It's one of Sony's best and most successful games out there. You know, I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there that don't want this game to fail. I certainly don't want it to fail, but this situation definitely needs to be rectified, and it needs to be rectified right now. And that is all I've got for you guys in this video today. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you haven't had the chance to share it with your friends and hit that like button, that would be awesome. And hey, if you're feeling ultra spicy, consider subscribing to my channel so that you're always up to date on what kind of thing I've got going on. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Later. Meow meow.